take it into that. You take it off.
I might not. Okay. I asked Casey to, I was so glad that Michael Strickland came, and I asked Casey to allow me to follow Michael Strickland. Because Michael Strickland is the living proof. He makes my point. Unequal enforcement of the law against conservatives and Christians. He makes my point. He's my exhibit 1. Oh, I'm sorry. Everybody tells me I talk too loud.
Here's what we do. If you got papers there, we'll turn this and do this.
Oh.
And do that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Pardon me? Okay, thank you. Okay, I practiced law in Oregon for 33 years. I finally came out of the conservative closet on January 26, 2017. Because I was in an event with a bunch of female attorneys, and they were screaming, bawling, etc., over Trump's win and Hillary's loss, acting like little toddlers, temper tantrums. And one of the things that troubled me the most was they refused to admit that Trump voters were fellow Americans. They all claimed that they didn't know a Trump voter. They had no idea. They're sitting there going, hey, do you know somebody that Trump voted? Well, no, do you? Well, maybe I can find one. My brother-in-law maybe did. You know, I mean, come on. Clackamas County, 79,000 people voted for Trump, and 90,000 voted for Hillary. Oop, I'm getting it backwards. So come on. How hard would it be to go find a Trump voter? They didn't want to. They didn't care. They wanted to pretend like they didn't exist. So, okay. Now that we know that Obama Department of Justice and the Obama FBI weaponized its massive resources against candidate Trump and President Trump, let's turn to the corruption in the Oregon's Department of Justice and Oregon's District Attorney's offices. Again, Michael Strickland, exhibit number 1. A district attorney has a great deal of power and authority. He or she can pick and choose who to prosecute, what to prosecute for. Unequal enforcement of the law is wrong, regardless of the law or the person involved. Your neighbor should not be prosecuted for the exact same crime that the DA ignored last year when you did it. I am describing here the grossly unequal treatment of 2 Portland journalists by the Multnomah County DA, Rod Underhill. Michael touched on it briefly. In March 2015, about 15 months before his persecution began, left-wing video journalist Skye Fitzgerald met with Michael, who just spoke with you. This event occurred 15 months before Michael's persecution. Michael had long been a thorn in the side of Portland's mayor, city council, the loony liberals that are in the process of destroying the city of roses, and the thugs who riot in downtown Portland. Okay. A colleague arranged for the 2 journalists to meet at a Gresham restaurant to discuss Fitzgerald's gun control documentary. You guessed it, the liberal could not win the argument using facts and logic, so he resorted to violence when Michael asked him, quote, why are you lying to people in your documentary, unquote. With that, Fitzgerald grabbed both of Michael's cameras, 2 of Michael's cameras. They scuffled outside the restaurant, inside the restaurant, so the manager asked them to leave. Fitzgerald walks out of the restaurant with Michael behind him calling 911. The 2 wound up in the parking lot where Fitzgerald charged at Michael, pinning him against a car. He then picked Michael up and slammed him to the pavement where he jumped on him with all his weight. Fitzgerald was then seen putting Michael's cameras in his car and driving away. Michael's arm was broken in 3 places and his shoulder was dislocated. His arm was so badly damaged that it required multiple surgeries, 13 screws, and hospitalization. At the time, the doctor wasn't sure he would get that full use of his arm would return.
We
With
never did regain full use.
okay. I thought you were okay.
No.
I'm sorry. Okay, with Michael's camera and the colleague's camera, almost the entire beating and theft were caught on tape. Gresham police cited Fitzgerald for the assault and theft, but the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office refused to prosecute the liberal journalist. The office is headed by Rod Underhill, the same man who persecuted him a year later. He's a liberal activist pretending to be looking out for the people of Oregon. After all, conservatives deserve whatever liberals do to them, right? Don't you all agree with that? Okay. Oh, there's something wrong with you guys. As Michael just told you, a year later, the same district attorney, Rod Underhill, made Michael the victim, made this victim of the previous assault, went after him like a raging bull. District attorneys who identify as liberals see their mission not so much to enforce the law, but to enforce the law with a heavy hand against Christians and conservatives, or anybody that the left labels right-wing. And they apply the law lightly against known liberals, especially if those liberals are breaking the name in the law in the name of liberalism. The rule of law is being replaced by the rule of liberalism in Oregon. Contrary to popular belief, attorneys are human beings. Some of us. Like all of you in the audience, each attorney brings to his job his own unique personal experiences, biases, and viewpoints. Over the last 30 years, the Oregon Department of Justice and too many of the 36 district attorneys' offices have been taken over by liberal activists. As liberals gained more and more power, they hired more and as Democrats gained more and more power in Oregon, they hired more and more liberal activists to fill important positions within the government, positions of power over you and me. This time, this includes the Oregon Department of Justice, where liberals can do the most damage to Christians and conservatives. Currently, there are two kinds of government attorneys. The liberal activists who use the law to push their social and political agenda, and level-headed attorneys who just want to apply the law fairly. There are more and more of the former and fewer of the latter, because the Oregon Department of Justice is only interested in hiring liberal activists, and too many of the district attorneys' offices are just as partisan. Remember the 2004 election? I guess everybody are old enough. Okay. That's when the Senator John Forbes Kerry was challenging George W. Bush for the presidency. Kerry highlighted his 4 months, whoopee-doo, in the Navy during Vietnam because Bush had not been to Vietnam. The men who served with Kerry during the Vietnam War knew he was lying, and they started contacting each other after all those many years. These veterans finally decided that they needed to set the record straight about the claims of this Democratic candidate for president. So they put together a public service ad wherein several men who had served with Kerry talked about what really happened during Kerry's time in Vietnam. By the way, I love this. I gave a small donation to them, because everyday non-political Americans freely voicing their concerns about a candidate that they know. Now, I mean, this is democracy at its very best. Speaking truth to power, as the Democrats are so fond of saying. One such Vietnam veteran happened to be a long-serving deputy district attorney in Clackamas County. After he was seen on TV criticizing an important Democrat, the DA's office started combing through his personnel files. They found a 10-year-old violation of personnel rules and suspended him. Meanwhile, the Oregon State Bar, which is owned by liberals, I don't know if you know this, but, I mean, real loony liberals, not just middle-of-the-road liberals. They opened some investigations to see if they could find a way to disbar him. With a suspend his license. And with a suspended license, then he'd lose his job as deputy district attorney. They even delved into his sex life and made it public. In the long run, this veteran got his job back, and the bar could find no dirt on him, so they closed their investigations. But the message was clear. They weren't targeting him so much as they were targeting every other attorney in Oregon. If you're going to practice law in Oregon and want to keep your license, you do not have freedom of speech rights to criticize a Democrat. Period. Diversity of thought is not allowed among Oregon attorneys. That's why I was in the closet for so long, because I wanted to keep my license. Back in the good old days back in the Old West, if you wanted to destroy somebody's livelihood, you burned down his barn, you burned his crops, you killed his cattle. Today, you whine to the state of Oregon and they do it for you. All of you are aware of Sweet Cakes Bakery in Gresham. Okay. This small business was intentionally targeted by attorneys and others working for the state of Oregon as an example to others, as an example to you, to prevent you from fully exercising your freedom of religion. Even if Sweet Cakes wins their pending appeal, the punishment was in the process. Aaron and Melissa Klein's punishment was 6+ years of torture and expense they endured, as well as the loss of their business. They lost big time, big time. A few Oregonians can compete. Are you giving me the hook there, Stacy? Casey? Oh my goodness. I timed this before. I read it at home. Oh well. Okay, very few Oregonians can compete, with the resources of the state when they come after you. What I find so fascinating about this, the lesbian couple did not just stumble into Sweet Cakes one day. They even admitted buying there before, and they knew that the owners were committed Christians. Sweet Cakes was probably targeted by some militant, hate-filled gay lobby who recruited this couple to go into the bakery. Okay, I gotta get, to the conclusion. I'm just about ready there, Casey. Okay, the militant left has made a lot of progress toward their goal to destroy American society and the rule of law by terrorizing the majority. One bakery, one Christian, one attorney, one judge, one veteran, one journalist at a time. I was going to talk about Judge Vance Day, but Casey won't let me. Okay. After all of the speeches are given, come over to the front desk and pick up your copy of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Hillsdale College sent me 600 of these for free. Woo! Over the last 2 years. Okay. Don't listen to what liberals claim is in this. Read it for yourself. It's not that difficult. A little bit stilted, old-fashioned, of course, but come on. Conservatives are smart enough to read this. I will leave you with one remark that was allegedly made by Joan of Arc in the 15th century France. As she stood before the judges who condemned her to be burned at the stake, she said to them, "You are not fit to judge me." I humbly suggest that liberals are not fit to judge Christians and conservatives. Thank you.